Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, whatcassread. I've got Luna here. I don't think she'll hang around that long. I wanted to take some time today to film a video wrapping up all of the books I read for the first part of the year. And since we're in the middle of August, I wanted to do this before the August wrap up. So this will be like books that I read from the months of January through July. Wasn't that many. But I did want to give you all an update on what I have been reading throughout the year, my thoughts on these books, and so let's get to it. So the first book that I did read, and the only book I read from January up until June, this is How the King of Elfame Learned to Hate Stories, written by Holly Black. This is a little short snippet novella taking place after the events of Queen of Nothing, which is the third and final book in the Folk of the Air trilogy. We get to follow along with Cardan, we get some flashbacks from Cardan, and then we're following along with Jude again. So like I said, it's a little bit of an extended epilogue after the events of Queen of Nothing. This was just something that I absolutely had to have because it's stunning. It is a stunning, it is a stunning little novella, and it's gorgeous. Look at the, oh my gosh, just look at this. Look at the naked hardback. Look at the back of the dust jacket. It's just gorgeous. So there's been very few series out there that have like taken me away, swept up into the fandom in recent memory the way that the Folk of the Air trilogy did. I have the regular hardcovers, I have the black hardcovers, and then I have this really cool edition of this little novella. I'm just a sucker. I'm just a sucker for Cardan and Jude, and yeah, no apologies. So, I mean, I gave this a 5 out of 5 star read. But is it a 5-star? Who knows? Who can say? Alright, then the next book that I read, I did not pick up again until June. That's because I had a baby in February, couldn't really read anything, and when I was finally ready to read again, I decided to pick up the biggest book on my TBR. And just a book that I knew that if I picked it up, I would be so interested, so invested. So despite like all the other things that were going on, this would be a book that I would definitely want to come back to. And that book, of course, is Words of Radiance, written by Brandon Sanderson. It follows the Way of Kings, and we are back in the world of Roshar, back on the Shattered Plains with the same characters that we fell in love with. So we're back with Kaladin and Bridgefor, back with Dalinar Kholin and his sons. We're back with Shallan and Yasna. The big thing that we're trying to really uncover in this book is solving the mystery of the Voidbringers and trying to solve what happened to the Knights Radiant and will we be able to bring them back. That's about as vague as I can make it without making it too spoilery, and I think I did a pretty good job. I loved this installment. I mean, there's just, is it even fair to like bring up Brandon Sanderson Stormlight Archive in the midst of all these other books when this is like an easy 5-star? I don't even know. I don't even know if it's fair to bring it up. I was really, really glad to pick this one up, and this one like kickstarted the rest of my reading for the rest of the year, just like I kind of knew it would. I went back and forth with this one, physical, Kindle, and audio. I needed all the help that I could get between me and all the different things that I had available to me to read this book. It was definitely a group effort, but we managed to make it happen, and this was an easy 5-star read for me. Now, I don't quite remember the order that I started finishing some of my other books, but I'll take the time to bring up the last 3 books in the Spellsinger series. And it must have been these ones that I picked up next because I had started thinking about, oh, how great audiobooks had been for me. So I wanted to jump back into a series and to an audiobook narrator that I knew that I could listen to. So book number 4 I finished was Soulbinder. This one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars to. Book number 5 was Queenslayer. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. The 6th and final book is Crownbreaker. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars as well. So the Spellsinger series follows a young man named Kellen, who's the member of this powerful magical people called the Jantep. And Kellen is the son of this powerful mage family, but is embarrassed to find out he actually doesn't possess any magic. And that synopsis sounds quite comical, but it's actually, see my dog back there. The synopsis itself sounds quite comical, but in reality, it's a very big problem, and it's an embarrassment not only to his family, but his father has very big ambitions for the family as well. So it's kind of an embarrassment among all of the people, and he becomes an outcast of society. He gets involved in many, many kinds of adventures. I said this in my series update that I feel like the last 3 books of the series were a lot better than the first half of the series, and that's just because things got a little bit darker. And you know me, I kind of like when things take a little bit of a dark turn, and Sebastian de Castell does that pretty well. This is the second full series of his that I've read, and he's releasing his next book. I think it got pushed back to next year, which is a pretty big bummer. He's not afraid to put his characters through the paces. All of the books that I've read of his so far have all been first-person perspective, so you really get a lot of the mental anguish that these characters go through. I think that he wraps up series very well. I was very satisfied with the conclusion of the Spellsinger series. And I think, you know, if you're looking for a series, never mind the fact that this is young adult, like if you're looking for a series where the protagonist isn't always the best at things. Really enjoyed the Spellsinger series, finished that one on audio. Then I think the next book that I finished was Finders Keepers, written by Stephen King. I decided that I wanted to read more Stephen King, and I'm trying to put at least one Stephen King book on each TBR per month. The first one that I ended up picking up was this one, which is book number 2 of the Bill Hodges trilogy. It was a natural fit for me to be able to pick this one up because I already finished book number 1 of the trilogy and I really liked it. So in book number 1 of the trilogy and throughout the trilogy, we follow our main character, Bill Hodges, who is a retired police detective in the city of Chicago. Now, the first book has a completely different premise than this book. This book, we don't follow any of the same murder mystery that happens. We follow a completely new mystery. This famed author is murdered in his house a number of years ago, and the people who murdered him ended up stealing a bunch of his unfinished manuscripts and a lot of his journal entries, and then those went missing. So now in present day, it's kind of this like urban legend about these missing manuscripts, and we follow along with a young boy who becomes obsessed with this author. So it takes quite a departure from Mr. Mercedes. I did enjoy it. It was really interesting, but it was also at the same time like, what does this have to do with Bill Hodges? What does this have to do with anything in the trilogy? But I did like it. I did give this one 4 out of 5 stars. So I do have End of Watch, which is book number 3, coming up in my TBR as well. All right. A book that I should have finished last year, but I absolutely didn't. Hollowpox, The Hunt for Morrigan Crow. This is book number 3 in the Nevermore series. Absolutely love this series. This was another easy peasy 5 out of 5 star read for me. So we are actually following Morrigan Crow in like her second full year of her living in the mysterious land of Nevermore. I'm always surprised at what Jessica Townsend can do in terms of like making Morgan still go through the paces of like feeling like an outsider still in this world, feeling like she still has to prove herself, which is something that I really like about Morgan. She doesn't always get things right, but she's learning and exploring, and we had a really great magical library scene in here, and that is a thing that I absolutely love, like any kind of magical library setting. This one was probably one of the best ones that I'd ever read. But again, this one was an easy 5 out of 5 star read. Anything that Jessica Townsend wants to come out with in the Nevermorian world, I am absolutely here for. All right, 2 more physical books, and then I did have 2 ebooks that I read as well. The next Stephen King novel that I did pick up was Misery. I wanted to pick up something a little bit more classic of his, but not quite go into something super scary quite yet. This one follows, gosh, what is his name? Paul? Yes, Paul and Annie Wilkes. I should know Annie Wilkes, but Paul Sheldon, who is a novelist, and Stephen King likes to write novelists as main characters, he finishes a book. He's kind of on this like self-isolated vacation where he was finishing a book, and then he breaks down. This woman named Annie Wilkes finds him. Turns out Annie Wilkes is his biggest fan, and she chains him up and keeps him in her isolated cabin. And things go from there. It does get pretty gruesome, but I don't know. I was kind of expecting to be a little bit more terrified of Annie Wilkes than I actually was. I was more confused by Annie Wilkes and just like the whys. But like I kept asking myself as we're like reading about Paul Sheldon being chained up, like, why are we here? Why? Why is this a thing? And of course the questions do get answered later on, but I did, for as short of a book as this is, I did spend a good chunk of it just kind of questioning, like, why? Which I know is a problem for me when I read thrillers, so I shouldn't be surprised. Like, I kind of always want to know the motives of things, and in thrillers we don't always get a long drawn out answer for some things. We may not even get an answer for some things. I ended up getting Misery 3 out of 5 stars, which could be a shock for some people because I know this ranks pretty highly among a lot of Stephen King fans. But for me, this one was a 3-star read. Happy to have read it, happy to continue through his list of books. All right, and then the last physical book that I want to talk about, this is The Blinding Knife, written by Brent Weeks. This is book number 2 of the Lightbringer series. So I did continue on with this book in audiobook form. It didn't quite grab me as much as the first book in the series did. So this follows Kip and Gavin Guile. We'll say those are our 2 main perspectives that we follow. In this world where color magic reigns supreme, we have this character of the Prism who is able to wield all of the colors. I don't want to get too much into like the setup for this book because it's a pretty big spoiler. The setting I enjoyed a lot more. I enjoyed Kip a lot more in this book in the setting of the Chromaria, which is like the magical university setting. So naturally I was a big fan of just like watching Kip go through the paces of getting his magical education. I didn't find him as annoying as the first book. The first book he can get pretty annoying, but there's still like the underlying Brent Weeks over-sexualization of women characters that, like, normally, honestly, it doesn't get to me, but having each and every single character peering down women's blouses and, like, every single time I'm hearing from their character perspective, I have to listen to it, that got to be a little too much. Like, normally I'm just like, it just kind of like rolls off whatever. But like literally every single time, wow, I was like, good lord. I didn't find the twists and turns in this one to be as big. Now there is like a pretty big bomb that drops on us again, and I like literally like stopped what I was doing when I was listening. I was like, wait, did that just happen? But it still wasn't as big of a shock as the things that I learned in the first book. So I did give this 4 out of 5 stars, which was surprising. This was a 5-star TBR prediction for me, but you never know what's going to happen with the rest of the series. Okay, so there was a book that I DNF'd, and that was Stormfront, written by Jim Butcher. That's book number 1 of the Dresden Files. So this follows Harry Dresden, who is a wizard. Is he a warlock or is he a wizard? He's a wizard for hire in the city of Chicago. So I read a lot of Chicago novels lately. He kind of works as like a freelance detective on the side of the Chicago Police Department and works for these like particularly gruesome crimes. The execution, I think it's just me and urban fantasy don't always see eye to eye. Same thing with thrillers. I want more. I want more explanation. I just want more. And I just don't think urban fantasy as a genre, like as a, you know, as the whole vibe of urban fantasy, that's not really what it's there for. It's not really there to explain all the complex things. The case that Harry Dresden is working on is really fascinating, but it couldn't hold my attention. Same problem I ran into with Brent Weeks and like all the thoughts about women, all the thoughts that Harry Dresden has about women. It's like every single person asks Harry Dresden why he doesn't have a date, or does he have a date, or when was the last time Harry got laid, and I was like, oh my god. Okay. And again, it's not something that like bothers me all the time, but for this instance, I was like, I do not care about Harry Dresden's love life this much. I barely know him as a character. So I think I made it 30% of the way through Stormfront before I DNF'd it. Now, I did have someone comment on my Twitter, because I did like write in my review that I DNF'd the book. And I did have someone comment to me saying like, yeah, I could see how you DNF this one. It's not until like book 3 that the Dresden Files really gets going. So I just don't know if I want to try another Dresden book. But that was my one DNF so far this year. And then the last ebook that I picked up was The Merciful Crow, written by Margaret Owens. So this is a young adult duology, and it takes place in this magical world that has a caste system, and all the levels of the caste are named after various types of birds. So the ruling class is the Phoenix class, the Phoenix caste, and they have fire magic, and there's all kinds of different casts. We have hawks, we have peacocks, we have pigeons, and we go all the way down to the crows, the very bottom of the cast, and they actually have no magical powers. They're mostly nomadic because they're really not afforded any kind of place in society. They're not even really allowed to live among everybody. But the reason why they're tolerated is because there's this plague called the Sinner's Plague, and the crows are immune to it. So their main role is to travel the roads, and when someone lights a plague beacon, they actually will travel to the village or the place that lit the beacon and dispose of the dead body. It's a really cool setup, something different that I haven't really read in any other kind of young adult magic system in fantasy world. So I did like that one. It's royal political plot line. We follow a young girl and her band of crows. I ended up giving this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. It wasn't quite a 4-star read for me, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't as high as a 4-star. And I think I remember now, the reason why I gave it a 3.5 instead of a 4, because like the setup and the magic was cool enough that it could have been a 4. But for how short of a book it was, the middle kind of dragged a little bit. And it was a little bit repetitive. Like, I felt like we had been doing the same thing, just in a different spot. And then we did the same thing again in another different spot. So that got a little bit repetitive for me, which is why I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. All right, so there you have it. I hope you were able to understand me as my cold and cough kind of infiltrated this video, but these are all of the books I had been reading for the first half of the year and what I thought of them. So let me know what you think about these books in the comment section below. Let me know what you have been up to, what you're currently reading, and like I said, we'll be anxious to see kind of the wrap up of some of these series or some of the continuations of some of these series as I continue on with them in my August wrap up. Follow me on my social media if you want. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at whatcassread. It's the same as this channel, so it should be super easy for you to find. And you know how these videos end. I'll talk to you later.